Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the second part of fatigue in torsion, and here we are going to do a numerical problem. The statement is given. There's this shaft which is connected to a wall, and there's a couple applied to it, which is changing in magnitude from 0.5 to the force is changing from 0.5 to 2 kilonewtons. So the torque also changes. And there's a fillet at the wall, and because of stress concentration factor, that constitutes the critical part of this structure. So we are going to find out the factor of safety for infinite life for Goodman fatigue failure criterion, and later on for Gerber criterion. So let's start by recalling that in this kind of a problem, because it's a problem with pure shear, and that means that we'll be using the fatigue diagram here. And the reason for using fatigue diagram is that the SN diagram won't do, because it's not completely reverse stress but fluctuating stress. So we'll be using a fatigue diagram, but the x and y axis of the diagram will be different than what we have been usually doing in our previous lectures. And let's see how they will be different. In this case, there will be shear stresses and shear strengths plotted on both axes. So we'll have to find these values and then plot them here. So on the x-axis, instead of SUT, we'll be plotting SSU, ultimate strength in shear, not ultimate tensile strength. Similarly, for in place of endurance limit, we'll be plotting endurance limit in shear. And then if it's the modified Goodman criterion, like there is the case in part A of this problem, we'll be just joining these two with a straight line, and then we'll be plotting our line, this loading situation somewhere around here, and if it plots under this line, then you can say that it has a factor of safety of more than 1. Now let's start assembling all these quantities so that we can plot our point here on this diagram. So we'll start with the material. The material has been given, AISI 1010 hot rolled steel. Now in table A20, we can just read the values of SUT against this material, and that is 320 MPa. And yield strength, these are the normal stresses. You cannot use them directly, but this is the starting point. And this is very usual practice for you. It's 180 MPa. SE prime, again, very familiar process for you. 0.5 into SUT, which is 0.5 into 320, turns out to be 160 MPa. And the next step is finding out SE from SE prime, and obviously you have to bring in the correction factors. To convert this generic 160 MPa to an endurance limit that is pertinent to this question. Now let's start one by one with the correction factors, but let's start with Ka first. Ka, this is the surface factor, very familiar for you by now, and from equation 619, Ka can be easily calculated. A SUT power B. Now A and B again have to be read from the table, and that table happens to be 0.62 against hot rolled, talking about a certain kind of finish, against hot rolled A is 57.7 and B is equal to minus 0.718. So putting these values, Ka 57.7 into SUT, we just read off the chart, 320, and power minus 0.718, which turns out to be 0.917. So we're done with the first correction factor. Now let's take up the second one, that is KB. KB happens to be, again, very familiar with for you, size factor. Now here we make corrections for the size, and if the cross section is anything other than the circular cross section that is used for the rotating beam experiment. Now here in this case, obviously the section is the same circular section, so that is not the problem. The only thing that could be of interest or of worry is that this is non-rotating, whereas the rotating beam specimen, as the name implies, was rotating. But it doesn't matter, because if it was bending and non-rotating, you had to calculate the equivalent diameter. But here in this case, you don't need an equivalent diameter, because whether it's a rotating beam bending type situation, and I'm going to explain it here. If circular cross section is rotating, and if a torsional specimen is, whether it is rotating or not rotating, there's one thing in common, and that is the distribution of stress. That is, the outer ring takes up the bulk of the stress, and I'll explain this later on. This is the area that takes up the bulk of the stress. Similarly for this. And why is that the case? That is because the distribution of stress in bending is like this. Now, if it is non-rotating, then this is the case. There's maximum stress at the top and the bottom. But because it is rotating, so these top and bottom points keep on changing. So the outer ring takes up most of the stress. And this is the case in torsion also. This is obviously in bending, this is normal stress. In torsion, you have the same. In torsion, you have the same distribution. The only difference being that the stresses are shear stresses. That's all. And it doesn't matter whether it is rotating or non-rotating, because at any section, even if it's a stationary situation, this section has this kind of, at any section you'll have the same situation, zero stress at the center and maximum at the outer fibers. So even if you were to calculate the equivalent diameter in this case, you'll get the same answer, because equivalent diameter is based on this portion of the cross section that takes up 95% or more of the maximum stress. And this is sometimes a cause for confusion. So if it's a torque problem, whether it's rotating or non-rotating, you don't need to calculate the equivalent diameter. Yes, if it's a non-circular cross section, that's a different thing. But here, all you need to do is you just take up the equation 620. And according to equation 620, KB can simply be calculated as D over 7.62 minus 0.107. Now in this case, D has been given 20 over 7.62 0.107, and if you calculate this, this turns out to be 0.902, and you would have guessed it, because it is greater than 7.62. 20 is greater than 7.62. 7.62 happens to be the diameter of the rotating beam specimen. So bigger the size, the greater the chances of flaws there. So you get value less than 1. Now Kc, we come to Kc now. Now this is the first time we are talking about Kc in a numerical problem. Yes, we have discussed this. Kc, this kind of Kc, this is the first time we are going to use it, and this Kc is load factor. In Excel problem, you have been using Kc is equal to 0.85, and in bending you have been using Kc is equal to 1, because that is the same kind of loading that is used in the rotating beam specimen. Here you are going to use Kc for torsion equal to 0.59 for torsion, and this comes from, actually this 0.59 comes from, recall yield criteria, recall the von Mises. Yield criterion. There was a number 0.577. This number converts your, for ductile materials, this number converts the normal strength into shear strength. So here essentially we are basically using this AC to convert SE into SSE. So this converts basically this actually, this is the point, this is an important point to be noted here. This converts SE to SSE, because we are not interested in endurance limit, we are interested in endurance limit in shear. This is endurance limit in shear. So if we are we talk about the other fact, KD, KE, KF, there's no talk about temperature or reliability, so we can take all of those equal to 1. So the next step will be calculation of SSE. So here I'll be using this equation. I'll be using this equation, but when I put 0.59 in place of Kc, and this 0.59 again comes from, this is actually 0.577. This you can think of it as the same 0.577. It becomes 0.59. It's essentially the same thing. Now, when we use Kc is equal to 0.59, then Se becomes SSE. So I'm just writing SSE here, 0.917. This is the first Ka into 0.902 into 0.59. The rest are just 1, and SE we had calculated was 160. So this becomes 78.08 megapascals. Now this is basically the SSE value that we are going to plot on this diagram. Now we still need SSU, and SSU, if you recall, there's an empirical relationship between SUT, which we have just read off the table, this SUT 320, and there's an empirical relationship. We discussed this in the first part of this lecture. SSU, ultimate strength in shear, is nothing but 0.67 into SUT. Now this is obviously an empirical relationship, so it's not very accurate, but this gives you a pretty good value for this. So 0.67 into SUT was 320, so SSU becomes 214.4 megapascals. So this takes care of the strength part. Now we need to see the stress part because we have to plot the point. So when it comes to stresses, we have to calculate two values, tau A and tau M. These are the two axes, the alternating component and the mid-range component. Now these are the two stress values. KTS has been given to us, geometric stress concentration factor 1.6, but because it's a fatigue problem, we won't be able to use KTS directly. We need KFS, fatigue, stress concentration factor in fatigue. The value is 1 plus Q KTS minus 1. Now Q is not sensitivity, and this is read off figure 621. Now figure 621, why 621? Figure 620 gives you values of non sensitivity for normal stress situations. This is a shear stress situation, so you'll be using figure 621, and we'll be reading this Q value against R is equal to 3. This is the fillet radius given, and SUT, because it's a function of material also, 320 MPa. Against these values, we'll be interpolating. We'll be reading between two curves, and it turns out to be 0.78. Now KFS, very simply 1 plus 0.78, and this 0.78 won't be very accurate. A rough figure will do. 1.6 minus 1, so this turns out to be 1.47. Now we have the fatigue stress concentration factor value also available to us, and we'll be using this presently. Now we come to the maximum and the minimum torques, Tmin and Tmax. Now if we come to the figure, it's very simple. Force multiplied by this momentum, so this is 50 millimeters, and force varies from 0.5 to 2 kilonewtons. So we have two values of force and therefore two values of torque. Tmin will then be Fmin into 50 millimeters, and this will be Fmax into 50 millimeters. Putting in the values, 0.5 into 10 raised to power 3, I'm just converting kilonewtons to newtons into 50, these are millimeters. So I have this 25,000 Newton millimeters. Similarly, in this case, 2 into 10 raised to power 3, again newtons into 50 millimeters. So you have this value. Now, if you have Tmin and Tmax, the next is Tmean, which is nothing but Tmax plus Tmin over 2. Very familiar formulas for you. We've been using it for forces or for normal stresses, but the concept is very similar to all the fatigue questions. 100,000 plus 25,000 62,500 MPa. TA Tmax minus Tmin over 2. In this case, we have 100,000 minus 25,000, and this turns out to be 37,500 megapascals. Now with TA and TM, the next step is to calculate tau A and tau M. This is the last step. After this, we'll be able to plot these values. Actually, we don't plot them, we just use formulas, but essentially it's the same thing. Tau N mean component, the mid-range component is KFS. This is the stress concentration factor. TMC, this is the radius over G. Now KFS we just calculated 1.47. TM 62,500. C is the radius, so don't use 20, use 10. The common point of mistake for many people. J pi by 2 into again radius power 4, and you can get this cancelled. So you get the answer 58.49 MPa for tau m. Tau A, very similar. Here you have TA. See, other values are of course the same. So 1.47 into 37,500 into 10, that's the radius, pi by 2, 10 power 4, you get one radius cancelled, and this turns out to be 35.10 megapascals. Now all that remains is application of the different yield, the different fatigue criteria. Come back to this diagram. We're talking about part A of the problem as given by this statement. Find the factor of safety for infinite life using the Goodman. This blue line is the Goodman line. All we need to do is recall the equation. Now we're doing part A here, and that equation is Goodman criterion tau A over SSE plus tau m over SSU is equal to 1 over NF. Now this is exactly the same form for normal stresses, except sigma is replaced by tau and SE is replaced by SSE, induced limit in shear. Similarly, SUT, ultimate tensile strength, is replaced by SSU, the ultimate strength in shear. The other is the same. The concept is the same. So putting in the values, we have just calculated tau A, tau m, SSE, SSU are also known to us. So these are the values of tau A and tau m, 35.10, 58.49. Similarly, the SSE value is 78.08. We just calculated it. So all we need to do now is plug in the values, and the problem is as good as solved. 35.10 over 78.08 plus 58.49 over 214.4 is equal to 1 over NF, and NF, and let's write modified Goodman here just to differentiate it from part B. This turns out to be 1.38. This is your answer to the part A of the question. Now, although the question statement doesn't say so, but it's always a good practice. Always a good practice to check for yield. Why it's a good practice? Let's explain it here. There's also an equivalent of Langer line in this fatigue diagram, and if this is SSY, yield strength in shear, and this is also SSY, then if you join these two lines together, this is the yield line, or you can say the equivalent of Langer line. Of course, this is the modified Goodman line. Now, so if some point plots under the yield as well as the modified Goodman line, then it is safe against both these modes of failure. But it could be possible that something doesn't break under fatigue, but it yields. So we have to check this. It's always good practice to check this. And if you recall the equation for that, for the yield check, that equation gives you tau A plus tau M SSY over NY, and this SSY we just discussed. This is yield strength and shear. Now SSY can again be calculated very simply by using recalling the von Mises criterion, where you can convert the normal strength into shear strength for a ductile material, and the factor used is 0.577. So SSY is equal to 0.577 into SY. This is the yield strength that we read off the chart A20. Now just putting in the values 0.577 into SY. SY was 180 for this material. Into 180, this is 103.86 MP. Tau A, tau M values are already known. Put in the values 35.10 plus 58.49 is equal to 103.86 over NY, and NY then turns out to be 1.11, which is again safe. So your point is this loading situation, this is safe for both the lead as well as yield mode of failure. Now let's talk about part B of the problem. So in this case, we can further discuss this. NF 1.38, NY 1.11. So what is actually happening here is, if we extend this point on the same load line with the same slope, it will cross the yield line first, and later on it will cross the modified Goodman line. So actually what is actually happening here is, this point doesn't plot here. Actually it plots, complete this one first. It actually plots somewhere around this region, where it will, if extended, it will cross the yield line first and later on the modified Goodman line. And even the values 35.1 and 58.49, they also give a clue to that, because 58.49 will somewhere plot around, because SSU, this is 214. So this 58.49, it will plot somewhere around here, and 35.10, it will plot somewhere around here. What is happening is, if you extend, although this point plots here, but if you were to extend it, first it will cross the yield line, then it will cross the modified Goodman. Now if we come to point question part B, we are going to do the same thing, but this time we are going to use the Gerber criterion. Now for Gerber criterion, recall that table 6.7 gives you the equation for factor of safety, and this is a rather complicated equation, and not as simple as the one we have just used, but it is given in your table 6.7, albeit it is given in terms of normal stresses, but it's a simple matter of converting this into the values for shear stresses. So any stress here in this equation has to be shear stress, whether it's strength value or stress value. And apart from that, the form is exactly the same as that for normal stresses. So nothing to worry about here. You don't need to memorize this one. Just put in the values. We have all the values already, so no need to calculate anything further here. Same values. This turns out to be 1.73. Let's write Gerber here. So this is part B of your book. You don't need to check the yield again here because you've already done it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. Gerber criterion is for fatigue, as is modified Goodman. Now the value for Gerber factor of safety is higher, 1.73, and that is only to be expected because recall that Gerber criterion, if I have used the green line here, Gerber is, we join the same 2 points SSE and SSU, but we join them not with a straight line but via a parabola, something like this. So obviously modified Goodman line is more conservative than the Gerber line. So the Gerber line gives you a higher, it's a bolder theory. So it makes all the sense in the world. In fact, if you had gotten a lower value of factor of safety for Gerber line, that would have been a problem. You would have made some mistakes somewhere. You could be sure of that. Now, this is as far as this question is concerned. Now, just to end this, to cap this up, there's one point that needs to be made here, and that is this question that we have done is under the category of pure torsion, because there is only torsion here. There is no axial force. There was no bending because it was a couple. Recall, it's a couple. So there's no bending involved or axial force involved. Now, this is a rare situation. This kind of a problem, it can happen sometimes, but usually you'll be dealing more with, for example, shaft in a bearing type situation. Shaft in bearing. This is very prevalent. Now, whenever you have a shaft within bearings, then there'll be some torque there, obviously, but there'll always be bending stresses. Bending will be there because of the bearings. The shaft has a weight and all that sort of thing, and there's a pull and push from some belt or something. So usually you are going to get problems in which there will be torsion as well as bending normally. So this is rare. This problem that we have done is rare, although it can happen and you are equipped to deal with it. Now there's a notable exception here. Notable exception. There is a situation, and a very important situation, where you will get pure torsion, and that is helical compression springs. Helical compression springs, where you have pure torsion. Apart from that, even in helical extension springs, you'll have some sort of bending, especially in the parts. The main body is still pure bending, pure torsion, but the parts where you pull them, you have bending there. So this is just a recap of the situation, that this type of a problem you will encounter often, but most often you will encounter problems with torsion plus bending, or torsion plus axial, or axial plus bending. So when you have a combination, so for pure torsion you know how to do it. When there is a combination, for example, axial torsion bending, axial plus torsion, or axial plus bending, or bending plus torsion, or whatever, whenever, or all three of them, whenever there's a combination, then you won't do it as we have done this problem. This was for pure torsion. Obviously, in that case, you will be dealing with the problem using the method that we study under fatigue, under combined loading, and you can watch my lecture with that title if some sort of combination is there. Thank you very much.